This is Jenny Kunkel, and in this video we're going to take a look at table variables and then also temporary tables. So let's go ahead and get started. We're first going to take a look at table variables, and our table variable is something that we can use to store an entire result set rather than just a single value, like we looked at in the last video where we were essentially saving scalar results in our variables. Now we want to create a table variable to store the entire result set. And the thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a query that we can get the extended price for a product and then the employee's name that sold a particular order to a customer, what the customer's company name is, and then what year that order was sold, in order to do just a little bit of data analytics and try to determine who had the most sales and output it in kind of a report order for the company and have their total sales by year and the company name. And then we want to go ahead and use that same result set that we got back as a table variable to then execute a query to get the same type of information, but instead of using it for company, put it by employee name, the one who sold that order to the customer. So in order to do that, we first want to use our Northwinds database. We want to write this so that we would potentially be able to reuse it. And we start with our database that we're targeting. And before we actually go through and set up our table variable, let's write our select statement so that we can kind of see what it is that we're trying to create the table for. And our select statement is going to be essentially selecting the unit price for the product on the order, and we're going to multiply that by the quantity on the order times 1 minus any discount that was provided on the order. And we're going to save this as our extended price. Then we want to go ahead and retrieve our first name and last name for our employee. So this is going to be e.firstname plus a space plus e.lastname. And this is going to be our employee name, followed by essentially the year. So we want to take the year portion of our order date and we'll refer to that as our order year. And then finally, we want to go ahead and select the company name. And this is all going to be from our orders table. We're going to start there, inner join to the customers table. And this is going to be on the c.customer ID equal to the o.customer ID. Then we're going to inner join the order details. And this is going to be on the order ID equal to the order ID on the actual order itself. Then we're going to be going ahead and inner joining the employees. And this is going to be on our e.employee ID equal to o.employee ID. And if we put in our comma here, everything should start resolving. We should be able to select and make sure that we're getting data back. And now that we have a query that is running and providing us with data, we can go ahead and declare that table variable when we are going to do that. So essentially, instead of doing a create table, we are going to start with a declare. And this is where, again, we have a variable. So it starts with an @ sign, and we have a user-defined name that we want to refer to this variable. We'll call it order details. This is going to be a table, and then we pretty much set it up like we do the create, and we are going to put the extended price, and this is going to be a real. Then we have the employee name, and this is going to be nvarchar 31, so that's essentially the 10 plus the 20 plus 1 space, the maximum that can hold the entire full name for that employee. Then we have our order year. We're going to define that as an integer, and then the company name, and this is going to be nvarchar 40. And essentially we terminate that. In order to get our results into that table, we are going to go ahead and insert into our order details using the select statement that we coded before. Now essentially after we get done with this insert statement, our table variable is going to contain the result set. And if we wanted to do some follow-on queries, maybe in this case we want to go ahead and select the company name, the order year, and a sum of that extended price as total sales from our @order details. We can go ahead and group this by our company name and then also our order year, but then we are going to order it in the output by our total sales descending, and then our order year descending as well, and then our company name. We're going to go ahead and copy this query, essentially going to set this up as our employee name that we're going to be selecting, and then we're going to be replacing the company name by the employee name. So we should be able to run 2 queries off of our table variable that we just defined. If we go ahead and select everything and run it, we should see that we have 2 windows that are popping up. The first is the results of the first query, and the second is the result of the second query down below. It's getting all of its information from our table variable that we just defined. So that's essentially how we can use table variables. They are essentially going to have local scope. So when we actually do this, we would have to do it within a single batch. And by batch, anytime that we use a go statement, that's within a batch. And what we have here is within a single batch. So it's only going to have the scope during that run. Then another issue that we potentially have is, notice we are doing an insert into that table. In some cases, we do a select, and then we do it into a particular table to copy something. That's not going to work. We can do a select, we can do an insert, we can do an update, we can do a delete on our table variables, but we cannot do a select into the table variable itself. Now, if we go ahead and look at our next topic, which is going to be a temporary table, this is going to essentially only exist within the current database session. So when we have our open window, that's considered one database session. If we would open up a second window and try to access our temporary table from that session, it's not going to see that, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that to test that out. Now, in order to do this, I am going to go ahead and comment out some of this code, essentially this, and then I have my select portion, and I'm going to select it into a temporary table. Now, the temporary table, we have 2 options. We have a temporary table that's just for our session, and then we have a global temporary table, and we'll take a look at that next. But right now, we're just doing the temporary table, and this is going to be to our order details. One of the things with creating our name for our temporary table is we want it to be descriptive, but it can only be 116 characters long. When we use our temporary tables, they're useful for testing out our queries and for also storing data temporarily in a complex script. So we can come down here and where we have our @ sign, if we replace that with a pound, and come down here and replace that with a pound, everything should resolve. I can go ahead and select everything and rerun my query. It's providing essentially the same result using that temporary table. Now, if I open another new query session, remember each session is its own active session, and I try to just go ahead and execute this portion of the query. Notice it doesn't see the # order details. Now, if we change everything here from instead of using a single # to a double #, so let me go ahead and replace these. And I select everything and run that. I can see that I'm getting my data back. And if I would happen to come over here and change this, I'm in a different session, I can see that I need to put my group by here. So if I go back and select everything else here, it's going to resolve it. I could just get rid of the sum there, but I can go ahead and run the same query and get results. So it is seeing outside of this session that query. We'll show how we will close this session and see that we won't be able to access that in just a second. Essentially what we want to do is we want to copy everything here because we want to do one additional thing, and that is to use a derived table. So if I go ahead and start a new query, I'm going to place this in here so we have at least one session here. I'm going to go back to this window. As soon as I close this window and say no, if I try to re-execute this, my global temporary table is gone. I can no longer access it. So only while that session is running can I actually use that. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this. And the last thing that we want to look at here is instead of using global temporary tables, it's actually in a lot of cases more efficient to use a derived table, and we can do that. We've seen how we can use these. Maybe I'm going to do something with order details as, and then I can go ahead and select this from my order details. And then if I go ahead and add this to the second query as well, I should be able to come up with the same results that I would if I was using those global temporary tables. A little bit longer queries, but if they are going to be a little bit performant, certainly well worth the investment to code it. Pay now, pay later. Okay, so in this case, we can see that we're getting back the results as well. So as we look at the scope of these things, we have seen where we have our temporary table and it's only available during that session. We've looked at our table variable and it's only available within the current batch that's executing. We have our derived statement that we just executed, and obviously it's only available during the actual SQL statement because we have to go ahead and recode it down here for the second one. We also have views and standard tables, and they're going to be around until we would happen to go through and drop them from the system. So that essentially is going to cover our table variables and our temporary tables.